everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear. We have in front of us today the OLED screen for a Luxe 2.0 OLED. So this screen is a replacement screen. It is not a new screen, like a newer version or a better version or a brighter version or anything like that. It's just a replacement in case your screen goes bad, you broke it, you smashed it, you bent it, you did something to it where you need to replace it. Here it is, and we'll go through it, how to put it in. I'm gonna kind of skip through a lot of it, just getting the board out. If you're interested on how to do that, we have a video on just the board itself where I break it down and take it all apart for you. So I'm just gonna take it out real quick, and then when we get to the section of bringing the screen out, we'll get a little bit more in depth on that. So I've got my grips already taken off or unscrewed so I can get them off. My eyes out. Solenoid, speaker, bezel, speaker, battery, and board. All right, now from this position right here, we want to kind of get the board out. Now the board kind of just lays inside there. If you look closely at the board, or the screen I should say, you see this gold circle that's right there? That is the button that the little triangle, your on and off button right here. This pushes against that little button right there. It's an odd looking button. It doesn't really look like a button that you're used to seeing, but it is a sensor or a pressure sensor. So that's your button. You want to make sure that that's lined up properly with your outside button. And then you just want to lay it into the little groove or little triangle or trough that it sits in right there. So we're going to kind of slide this underneath. We're going to make sure that our everything lines up down in there. It looks like it's going, oh. Just want to make sure that these look the same, that I'm not missing something that's keeping that from wanting to slide in there. Doesn't look like it. There we go. I just want to be careful with the glass that's on there, or the little, this plastic housing, or if it's glass, I'm not sure. Acrylic it could be. That it is getting into the groove and sliding in, because that's what's going to hold it in place right there. And then I'm able to push that down in there and get it to be where I need it to be so that it fits properly. And if it doesn't look like it's fitting, don't ever force anything. All right, now I'm putting my hand on the back of this and I'm pushing my button to make sure that I can feel the button being pushed inside there. And everything looks good. Feels like it's in the right spot. It's not loose where it's just gonna fall out of there. It feels to be in the right spot, and my button is working as it should. So I'm going to go ahead and take my board. I'm going to drop my board back in place. Make sure that I don't crush the micro switch with the trigger, because you can see that the trigger sticks out through the back right here. And if I'm not careful, if my leaf spring on my my lever on my micro switch is forward and I try to push it down onto the switch or the trigger, I could break this switch off of there. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I want to make sure I don't crush any of the ports on the board with the OLED there. So I'm going to flip it over to make sure all of my pins on the OLED board line up properly with the new board. Make sure my micro switch is working properly. And then put everything back together. In there. As with anything that you're doing board-wise or electronics-wise, always take your time. If you're not sure how it works or it doesn't feel like it's going back together properly, never force it. Take it back apart, start over, find a video online of somebody else doing it. That way, you're not just blindly sticking things together and hoping that it works. We've got our battery in, our speaker in. Now we're going to take our joystick, put that in its place. And it is directional. That joystick does need to fit on there in a certain way. Hopefully you don't drop it in there and lose it like I did. There it is. So it is a square, like the part that it goes onto, even though it looks circular, it is a square shape on the inside. So you do need to find that right square shape and not drop it and knock it over again. And have it not stick to your sweaty fingers either. All right, there we go. So now we'll put our joystick through first. And then our speaker kind of just falls into place at that point. There. And there. And then we're going to turn it on and make sure that everything is right. So hopefully if we've got everything connected properly and all the pins are proper, it should boot up right away.
Battery level 40%. Firing mode semi-automatic.
All right, so everything's reading like it should. It is reading a ball right now because there's no air in the gun, so the bolt is forward, but I can pull it back with my finger and the eyes read properly. Let's turn off the eyes. Solenoid's clicking, so board's sending signals all the right places. The screen's reading out properly. Everything seems good, so the install was a success, which it should be if you take your time. You do have to be super careful on these OLED boards. You can see all these brass or copper, they're probably copper pins right here. They are extremely fragile. So if you don't line all these pins up and you try to smash the board onto these pins without it being perfectly lined up, these pins will actually bend and slide out and potentially disconnect from the board, and then you've just ruined the new board you bought. So be very, very careful when you put these in and make sure everything lines up as it should. Otherwise you will ruin it and then you'll have to buy another one. So be extremely careful with that. Take your time. This has been a kind of a demonstration on how to install a new OLED screen for your Luxe 2.0 board if you were to ruin the one you already have or it just went bad on you and you need to replace it. So if you need to pick one up, we have them. Order yours now through the website. Thank you for shopping on ansgear.com.